Okay, I'm going to walk you through how to make your own art notebook just from a few pieces of paper and the materials that I have on screen here. So when you're doing this, you're going to want a bottle of tacky glue, a pencil, some kind of large needle, string, scissors, a bunch of paper clips, a ruler, and a hole punch. What this is going to end up looking like is a book where you have like a nice sturdy cover and some pages on the inside that you can fill with artworks. And like I said, this is all made from just this paper. So the books, when you are finished with them, will measure to about 6.5 inches by 9.5 inches. And then the pages on the inside, each individual one will be 6 by 9. But if you open up, it'll be 9 by 12 as a spread. So what's great about this is, you know, if you run out of pages, you can very easily grab some more 9 by 12 size paper and bind in some extra pages in the back when you're all done. So as we're starting out here, we're going to make our cover first. And this is all the same kind of paper. I like to use tag board. I think the brand is Pagan, but it's just like a thicker, like a medium stock kind of paper, heavy enough to paint on top of, but not so heavy that you can't fold and bind it and do all the things that we want to do. Your cover page is going to be 15 inches by 21 inches in order for this to all work out properly. And you're going to start by folding it in half one way, line up your corners, and I like to use my ruler to like really crease that fold, so I'll just use like the flat edge and run that along. And then you're going to fold it in half the other way. Okay, so then this is actually going to be the book. So what's great about this is it's a double layer of paper, meaning this is going to be a little bit stronger, good for a cover, nice and sturdy. And then this is all going to fold in to create the binding. So it'll be a little bit smaller than this size when you're totally done. So now we're going to create the inside edge binding. So this is our top and this is our bottom. We're going to start by folding this in a little bit to give it kind of a nice edge. And you'll want to fold it in about 1/2 inch. So use your ruler and mark about 1/2 inch down along here. You can connect those dots if you want to. It doesn't really have to go all the way across though. You just kind of want to know where that 1/2 inch line is. And then you're going to go ahead and crease along that line. I like to use the ruler to help me get a straight crease there. And then, again, I like to use it to make that fold nice and flat. Okay. Now I want this to be bound down, so we're going to add our tacky glue. And just give myself kind of a few dots. Make sure I get some towards the edges for sure. And then a little bit more along the lines here. Now I'm going to fold that down and secure it with paper clips while it dries. I think you could probably use Elmer's glue for doing this. I prefer tacky glue because it's a little bit stronger. You could also use like a book binding glue. I wouldn't use hot glue though. Hot glue is going to give yourself too much thickness because it dries so quickly and you're not going to get a nice flat fold here. Okay, so while that glue is drying, I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So a 1/2 inch crease, and then glue, and then secure with paper clips. So this time when I'm gluing, I have 2 flaps that I'm working with. So I want to put glue underneath, but I also want to put glue in between those 2 flaps so that that gets secured. So making sure that's all laying nice and flat. Now I can do my edge folds, and these will be very similar, but I'm actually going to give myself a little bit more room because now you're having 4 layers of paper to fold over, so that's going to get increasingly difficult. So we're going to do 1 inch creases on both of these sides. It doesn't really matter which side you start with, so mark it at 1 inch. And this time, when I draw my line, I do want to go all the way out to the edges, and I'll explain why. Okay, so I want to create a nice, pretty corner here. So if I just fold it over straight like this, there's a chance that that flap gets kind of overlapped over there. So in order to make that corner pretty, I'm going to fold it in and line it up with that crease edge first. So it's going to create like a little triangle. And again, I want to secure that with glue. I did this edge first, so at this point that glue should be dry enough to hold itself down, so I can use those paper clips to secure this corner. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this corner. And then while that glue is drying, I'm going to do the other side. You may notice as I'm making all of these folds, I'm making sure that there's no air on the inside of my cover here. Now, I know that you might get some air on the inside. It's not ever going to be like a perfectly flat cover, but the more times you can kind of squeeze out that air before you fold, the less chance you'll have a bubbly cover, which if it is bubbly, it's not a big deal. It'll still work. All right, while these corners are drying, I'm going to go back to the other side and then make this fold. Again, I like to crease first, especially now that you have 4 layers of paper on those corners. It's going to be really helpful to put your ruler down and fold that line over your ruler. Okay, I'm going to make that crease first, nice and flat. Then I'm going to secure with glue. And I want to make sure that this glue gets out kind of towards the edges of this fold. And then this one also has a flap underneath here, so I'm going to get glue on the inside as well. And secure it all down. By this time, this side should definitely be dry enough so I can use these paper clips. And other side. Alright, this is looking pretty good. We're going to let all that glue dry. If there's any parts at this point where you can definitely see pockets where they're lifting up, you can go back in and, readjust those parts and paper clip them down to help that dry. These folds are pretty much how they're going to look. I think they look fine as an inside cover, but if you don't like having those creases and those folds there, you can open up your book and put in some colored paper, just like one sheet, and kind of glue it right over top of where those folds meet your paper, and that can kind of cover it up and make it look a little bit cleaner. So if you don't like the look of these creases and these folds overlapping, that's an option. You can do that later, and you can do it after you've already put in the binding of the pages. So it's fine to leave these paper clips in while we go on to the next step, which is putting in the pages. So I'm going to start by creating the holes in the back of my cover binding. Like I said, these should be about 9.5 inches long. Let me check. Yep, that's about what it is. So if yours matches that, then use the same measurements as me. If you got a different measurement, you can really do whatever makes the most sense, but I decided to do a 1/2 inch marking and a 9-inch marking. That way I have my 2 holes pretty close to that edge there. You don't want it touching the edge, otherwise your thread might be a little too close to that corner there. So a little bit in, about a 1/2 inch in is good for me. And then I did 2.5, 4 3/4, 7 inches. So it's not really evenly spread out, but it's enough to where it looks evenly spread out, and it really doesn't matter where you put these in. I do suggest doing 5 holes though. That seemed to be a good amount for getting everything the way that I wanted. Then you're going to take your handy dandy hole punch, and you're going to punch right through these edges here. Now, I wouldn't punch all the way down here because then you're going to end up with 2 holes, right? So I would line your hole punch up to where you're literally halfway through that circle. So then after you punch it, you then get a full circle on the inside. So just do little half circles the whole time. Now, for these ones on the edges, if you're overlapping with this crease, it's going to be really, really hard to put that hole punch through. So you might want to just kind of line it up with a flat book for those edge ones. if you are in my classroom following along my demo, and I'm available to you, I can help you get that punch through. If you're having a hard time, it does take a little bit of grip. I like to line it up first and then kind of get a hold on it. Okay, so now I have 5 holes going along here. Now, regardless of what kinds of measurements you used, when you do your inside papers, you want to make sure they line up to these holes. So instead of using the ruler again, I'm just going to, visually line them up. First, you'll want to crease your inside pages. So make sure they're nice and sturdy. I'm just using 4 pieces of tag board for this, and it's the same kind of paper as my cover. Fold it in half. And then as you're lining up your paper, you do want it to be kind of bookleted into each other. So instead of having like one sheet next to another sheet, I like to have them all stacked. So I'll have all of them flat stacked on top of each other and then fold them that way. That way when you turn it, it just kind of works more like a book. So create that fold. And then I would recommend just doing 2 at a time, because again, punching through 4 sheets of tag board is kind of crazy. So I'm just going to take out 2 sheets, line up my edges where I want them to go in the book. As you can see, there's a little bit of room here and here, and that's good because you want the cover to, cover your pages a little bit. So I'm going to make a mark at each of these holes, and then I'm going to hole punch. Again, with that half hole punch strategy. Let's say you don't have a big enough hole punch, or the hole punch you're using is just not working, it's just too hard, or your paper's too thick. You could also, poke these holes with a needle or cut out a slit with a scissor. I mean, you could cut out little triangles instead of circles. I think the hole punch is fastest, but it's absolutely not the only way to make a hole in these papers. Cool. Then I'm going to take my other 2 sheets, do the exact same thing. Could even line them up with these booklets as well. All right, now I'm going to make sure one of these goes inside the other. Make sure all those holes line up. You're going to get a lot of these little hole punch holes, so make sure you're collecting those in the trash. And then we're going to line up inside the booklet. Now again, it might be different which way you do it, so make sure all those holes line up. Now we're going to create our binding. So for the binding, you're going to need string and a needle. I like to use a larger size needle so that it's easier to thread. You're going to want to cut this string at 24 inches, which is just 2 normal 12-inch rulers. So you can get your string, measure it out to 12, and then you can just double it and then cut it there. String your string through the eye of the needle, and then you're going to start in this center hole. Again, line it all up. I'm going to take my needle from the inside of my book through the center hole to the outside of my book. And I'm going to leave a good amount of thread left here so that I can have something to tie it off with when I'm all done. Now I've got my thread behind the book. I'm going to bring it in through the second hole. Again, make sure that tail stays there. If you need to kind of hold it down with your thumb, you can. And then I'm going to go out my edge hole here. Back in the second one. Back out the center one. In the second hole over here. Out on my edge. In this one again. And then with my leftover string, I'm just going to tie these 2 together. So make sure it's pulled generally tight. You don't want to pull it so tight that you crease your paper, that you rip anything, right? But tight enough that it all stays together. And then I create my knot. I recommend tying a knot at least 3 times, just to make it nice and strong. And then cut any extra string that you have. So the great thing about this is that, if I run out of paper, I can take some more 9 by 12 sheets, line up those holes, punch them just like I did before, and then I can do this exact same binding technique, either putting my pages in the center here or, you know, lining my page up at the end. It still works. All of that will be fine. So all I have left to do now are take off the paper clips, and I have my book. So covers the inside pages pretty nicely. You can flip individual pages. When you're making your artworks, you can use just one page to make your artwork, or you can kind of turn and use both pages as like a full 9x12 artwork. It's totally up to you. Like I said before, you can put your colored paper on the inside binding if you like the way that that looks better. You can decorate the cover. You can paint this. You can draw on it. You can do anything you want to it. This is your notebook to fill your art with. So that's how you do it. Thanks for watching, and go ahead and make it.